say that in the third part.
Now, yeah, we're having a debate on feminism now, and Yasmin's just said how handsome the doctor was, but he's gone now. You can't say that's why everybody was laughing. So let's have that debate about feminism. The actresses Meryl Streep and Carey Mulligan were in London this week. They were discussing women's rights, something we're going to be talking about shortly. They were here to promote the film Suffragette, 100 years after Emmeline Pankhurst and an extraordinary group of women smashed windows and encouraged civil disobedience to win them the vote. Well, Brendan Gleeson plays a police inspector threatening to punish the protesters. It's another great role for a man who left teaching to pursue a dream of acting, and since then he's starred in films like Harry Potter, Braveheart and Gangs of New York. Well, the premiere of his film Suffragette was targeted by feminists who lay across the red carpet saying they were protesting about cuts to domestic violence services. The stars of the film applauded their action, saying it showed the suffragette movement was still alive and well. Later, at the Women in the World Summit, Meryl Streep, who plays Emmeline Pankhurst, said women had come a long way in 100 years, but she also told those of us in the audience her message was still don't give up the fight because it's not over. That two-day summit highlighted some gender inequalities that remain. In Britain, women are still paid less than men on average and are vastly outnumbered as political and company leaders. So what does that say about the fight for equality? Has it been won or not? Our question, has the battle for women's rights been won? We're joined this morning by Catherine Meyer, who's the co-founder of the Women's Equality Party, which has seen 40,000 members since the summer, hasn't it?
Members and supporters.
Members and supporters, which is the fastest, at the moment, fastest growing political party in the UK. Why did you feel the need to set up a Women's Equality Party?
Well, very much as Brendan Gleeson just explained, these are people issues, not just women's issues. It's the Women's Equality Party because it is women who are not equal in this country or anywhere. This is 2015, and yet nowhere in the world do women actually enjoy entirely equal opportunities or compete on a level playing field. And therefore, we named the party as we did to highlight that fact and to work towards the great prize.
Which is?
Well, the great prize is the reason that we talk about these being people issues is that everyone also benefits from gender equality. It's not a zero-sum game where if you give women more equality, it takes away from men. That's not how equality works. And there have been all sorts of studies that show the economic benefits of gender equality. McKinsey recently said it would add about $28 trillion to the global economy.
OK. Louise, do you think there is still gender inequality?
Of course there is, but I think there's also it's global, and I think, for example, where ISIL are trading girls into sexual slavery at the age of 9, where in Saudi Arabia women are still arrested for terrorism, and yet we do shameful deals to put them on the UN's Human Rights Council.
What about
shameful?
Here?
No,
that means no doubt that in other parts of the world,
I want to make the
women are having a horrific time.
Quite,
here?
And it is the duty of feminists not to navel gaze and look at minor inequalities here when the genuine fight is for women's fundamental and basic rights abroad. I was sickened, disgusted by both David Cameron and Barack Obama just after the film Selma had come out about the civil rights struggle, which was greatly celebrated in the United States, and rightly so. Weeks after that, we saw Barack Obama condoling the King of Saudi Arabia on his death when there is literally apartheid for women in Saudi Arabia. We need to look at women's issues where they're really happening instead of being selfish
they're not
in
here.
the West.
We're being selfish in the West.
They really are happening here. There is a gender pay gap here. Now, the gender pay gap here is, of course, much, much smaller than it is in other parts of the world. You can measure gender pay gap in all sorts of different ways.
But it's about women earn 80p for every man's £1.
Angela. As a declared non-feminist, but as somebody who went to the same school as the Pankhurst sisters, I went to a girls' school where female endeavour was absolutely embraced and encouraged.
We went to the same school.
Oh, wonderful! Well, there you go. So there you go. That shows the broad range of thoughts and opinions that were encouraged at our school. The fact is that I think personally, I feel that feminism is irrelevant and outdated in this country. say girls routinely outperform boys at school, more girls go to university than boys. Without question, there are issues perhaps about things like equal pay, but that's a societal issue. It's not a feminist issue. And the more that we create this chasm between men and women, the more we kind of encourage that idea. I mean, the thing is that biology did not make us inferior. It simply made us different. So if there aren't that many women in Parliament, as maybe Louise could testify, it's not so easy to balance a family with certain unsociable jobs. So it's not that we're not capable. We may not want the things that men are doing.
So men and women are different, and they are choosing different jobs. And actually, Yasmin, there was an interesting quote from Annabelle Carmel, who's a businesswoman, who said this week women should choose their careers carefully because they can be more sensitive than men and are simply not as good as them at certain jobs. I see a lot of women in business who try to be like a man and become aggressive, and I don't think that's good for women, and women aren't suited for that. Do you agree?
Well, you know, this is extraordinary, really, that we are in 2015. And up to a point, I do agree with what Louise has said, that sometimes, you know, we can get very introverted about the problems in the West. But the problems are real. One woman every week is murdered by a male partner or someone she trusts in this country. We have violence against women at extraordinary levels in our society. In our society.
But 100 years ago, women were being married off at the age of 12. They had no independent financial means.
But are we really going to just keep comparing ourselves to what happened to Juliet, you know, in Shakespeare's day? Where I think I am less convinced that women in power change the world. We are 52% of the population. We need to be there. And look around the world. Look around the world. The war in Syria, what happened in the Middle East? The torture chambers of all the dictators. Women didn't do that. Yeah. I can say, hand on heart, women didn't do that. Men do that. So to say women make no difference is yet to be proved. We need that change to happen.
And what needs to be done then? I mean, if Yasmin's saying we need to change and inequalities still exist, I mean, I know you were referring globally, but if you bring it back to this country...
Even here.
What needs to happen?
Well, on the 20th of October, we're unveiling a raft of intensely practical policies to accelerate the pace of change. Nobody's denying that there has been progress, but progress isn't linear. There are certain advances that also become eroded. There is a culture here, for example, an online culture and a media culture that makes it incredibly difficult for young girls. Young boys are suffering too. One of the points about this, again, these are people issues. This is about ensuring...
What about quotas? Brendan Gleeson mentioned quotas.
I agree with Brendan Gleeson that quotas are sometimes a necessary evil. They're not something that you would ever want to retain. Right. They are just something that you use as a mechanism in order to see change. It's not about a meritocracy. It's about breaking a logjam in politics. The political system here
if I may, I do think we can't let this pass without talking about the inequities that are inflicted on men in the name of feminism, which is making our modern movement into a joke. Today we hear that Sir Colin Blakemore has resigned from the Association of British Science Writers over the shameful treatment of Sir Tim Hunt, who was lied about in the name of feminism, and the reporting on him was proven to be completely false. He didn't make a sexist joke that was received in silence. There's audio of the applause, and yet, despite the evidence, we've seen that people who are totally committed to their ideology refuse to back down, even when audio and photographs prove that Sir Tim made no such remark. And this is an ally of women.
What's your point about women's rights?
I think
it wasn't women's rights that brought him down, was it?
Yes, it was. And it wasn't women's rights. It was the traducing of feminism to say distractingly sexy, let's have a hashtag, let's fit up a man for something that he didn't do. And that's why feminism is a joke. It's a joke in Britain.
Right. You're conflating something that happened to Tim Hunt, which, you know, I saw that you have done some research on the case. I've been reading what you say. To me, his institution looks like it may have reacted rather too fast there.
Yes.
But to conflate what people say on Twitter, and actually a very funny campaign, distractingly sexy, but of course it can't be funny because feminists don't have a sense of humour.
It could be funny if it wasn't lying about if it wasn't lying about a good man, it would have been funnier.
But the thing about it is you can't judge feminism by this case, or indeed by what happens on Twitter. If I judged what happened on Twitter as the real world, I also wouldn't like men very much.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't like anyone.
And we are talking about a case where there is nobody here to answer and have a right of reply, and we should say that there is a great deal of disagreement about what was said and how it's been interpreted, and the actions are making him go. So, and we can't go into that because they're not here to defend themselves.
There's disagreement.
But if we could just move on.
Resigned, that's a fact.
He has resigned. That's absolutely true. I want to hear from Tommy about what our viewers are saying this morning.
Yeah, Elaine on our Facebook page has said, we have the laws and the rights, but in many cases they're just not recognised. It'll take a long time to change the attitudes which have been built up over thousands of years, and as we're hearing from the panel, all around the world as well. Tricia says, I strongly object to women's rights campaigners speaking as though it were at the behest of all women. It isn't. I do not require anyone to speak on my behalf. Hope she doesn't mind me reading out her message. Luke says, the legal battle is only half the problem. Once that is won, it is people's minds that need to change, and that can only happen over time. And finally, Mark says, what does Angela imagine she would have said if she'd been allowed to comment on the violent behaviour of the suffragettes at the turn of the 20th century? One for Angela.
Angela?
I mean, I just think that modern-day feminism, a lot of it, is spoiling for an argument. I mean, the ludicrous campaign about putting women's faces on banknotes when there are legitimate discussions... Well, excuse me, the legitimate... See, this is another problem about feminism. Women are made to feel stupid because they dare to contradict some of the received wisdom about feminism.
That's it.
Well, you don't need to do the Oscar-winning sigh in the process. I mean, the fact is that because there have been stupid campaigns about putting Jane Austen on a banknote, the very real societal issues about domestic violence, about equal pay, are being overlooked by a bunch of militant women who feel that anybody who bothers to open a door for them is somehow setting back the female
Excuse me,
cause
can
by
I just answer the Jane Austen? This was a good campaign. This was a really wonderful, celebratory campaign, because we never had a woman's face on our banknotes. That you're offended by that.
I'm more offended. It's more offensive.
Hang on.
That you're not celebrating Jane Austen on our banknotes.
I'm allowed to have my opinion.
Why would you not want to do that?
Because I'm more concerned that I have enough Jane Austen banknotes in my pocket as the man sitting next to me, rather than whose mush is on the side of a fiver.
Which is exactly what we're here to ensure. You know, it's 45 years since the Equal Pay Act. I absolutely agree that you should have as many Jane Austen notes or whatever is on those notes in your wallet.
But the big issues
to you. Distraction, wasn't it?
Okay, Angela's point is the big issues are more important
because there is a shortage of role models. That we judge women more harshly, and one of the reasons why sometimes, because there are so few of us in the public eye, it actually puts the pressure on all of us.
Catherine, thank you. Angela, thank you. Yasmin and Louise as well. That's it for this morning.